You know that feeling when you meet someone new and you're trying to figure out if this could actually go somewhere? Not just whether there's chemistry or whether they're attractive or whether the conversation flows easily, but whether this person could actually be someone who shows up the way you need them to. Someone who's emotionally available. Someone who communicates in a way that works with how you communicate. Someone who's genuinely interested in building something real with you. It's such a strange time, those first 2 weeks. You're trying to be open without being naive. Hopeful without ignoring things that matter. And everyone's advice is either just go with the flow or watch out for red flags. And neither of those really tells you what to actually pay attention to. So let's talk about what actually matters. Not the obvious stuff like whether they remember your name or show up on time. And not some checklist of green flags versus red flags that makes you feel like you're grading someone. But actual conversation patterns that research and experience show us tend to predict whether two people can build something that lasts. Because here's the thing, compatibility isn't really about having the same interests or liking the same movies. It's about how two people communicate when things are easy and how they communicate when things get complicated. And you can actually see those patterns show up really early if you know what you're listening for. The first pattern is probably the most important one, and it's something you can notice in your very first real conversation. It's whether someone asks follow-up questions. Not just how was your day, but actually follows the thread of what you're saying. Think about the last few conversations you had with someone you were interested in. You mentioned something, maybe that you had a stressful day at work. Do they say, "Oh, that sucks," and change the subject? Or do they ask what happened? And when you tell them, do they ask how you handled it? Do they remember it the next time you talk? This matters because follow-up questions show that someone is actually tracking what you say. They're not just waiting for their turn to talk. They're building a mental map of who you are, what matters to you, what's happening in your life. And they're demonstrating that they find you interesting enough to want to know more. I worked with someone once who told me she knew her now husband was different on their second date because she'd mentioned in passing during their first date that she was nervous about a presentation at work. Their second date was 2 days later, and the first thing he asked when he saw her was how the presentation went. She said that moment stayed with her because so many people she dated would just move on to the next topic without remembering what she'd shared. That's the pattern. Not grand romantic gestures, just consistent attention to what you've said before. The second pattern is how someone responds when you share something vulnerable. And I don't mean trauma dumping or sharing your deepest secrets on a first date. I mean the small, everyday vulnerable things. You mention you're anxious about something. You admit you're not great at something. You share that you're disappointed about how something turned out. Does the person minimize it? Do they try to fix it immediately? Do they make it about themselves? Or do they just hear you? There's this thing that happens in early dating where people are so eager to be helpful or impressive that they jump straight to solutions. Oh, you're stressed about that? Here's what you should do. And while that can come from a good place, what it often signals is someone who's uncomfortable with emotional expression or someone who's more focused on being seen as capable than on actually connecting with you. The pattern you're looking for is simple acknowledgement. That sounds really stressful, or I can see why that would be hard, or even just, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. It's not flashy, but it shows that someone can sit with your feelings without needing to change them or fix them or make them about themselves. And then, if they offer support, it sounds like, is there anything I can do? Or, do you want to talk about it, or do you want distraction? That's someone who understands that support looks different depending on what you need in that moment. The third pattern is how someone talks about their ex or their past relationships. This is one everyone tells you to pay attention to, but usually the advice is just, if they badmouth their ex, run. And that's not quite right. What you're actually listening for is whether someone takes any responsibility for how their past relationships ended. Not because everything is always your fault or their fault, but because healthy people understand that relationships are dynamic and that they played some role, even if that role was just choosing someone who wasn't right for them or staying longer than they should have. If someone talks about their ex and it's all she was crazy, or he was a narcissist, or they were too needy, and there's no reflection about why they were drawn to that person or what they learned or what they do differently, that's information. It suggests someone who hasn't really processed their past and who might recreate the same patterns with you. But if someone says something like, we wanted different things and I didn't recognize that early enough, Or, I wasn't ready for something serious and I should have been more honest about that. Or even, I have a pattern of choosing people who are emotionally unavailable and I'm working on understanding why. That's someone who's done some internal work. And this doesn't mean they need to have it all figured out. It just means they're capable of self-reflection, which is one of the most important qualities in a long-term partner. The fourth pattern is really subtle, but once you notice it, you'll see it everywhere. It's whether someone seems to enjoy making you happy in small ways, not in grand gesture ways, in Tuesday afternoon ways. You mention you love a certain type of coffee. Do they remember that? You say you had a hard day. Do they send you something funny just to make you smile? You tell them about a song you can't stop listening to. Do they listen to it? This isn't about someone trying to impress you or win you over. It's about someone who gets genuine pleasure from bringing small moments of joy into your life. And that's a pattern that, if it's there early, tends to be there long-term. I remember talking to a woman who'd been married for 20 years, and I asked her when she knew her husband was the one. She said it was 3 weeks into dating. She'd mentioned that she always craved soup when she was stressed. A week later, when she was dealing with a family issue, he showed up at her apartment with soup from her favorite place. She said what struck her wasn't the gesture itself, but how happy he seemed to do it. Like making her feel better made him feel better. That's the pattern. Joy in caring for you. Not obligation. Not strategy. Just genuine happiness in your happiness. The fifth pattern is how someone handles it when you're not immediately available. This is big. Do they get anxious? Do they get irritated? Do they guilt trip you? Or do they just understand that you have a life? In those first 2 weeks, this comes up constantly. You can't respond to a text right away because you're in a meeting. You need to reschedule because something came up. You have plans with friends on a night they wanted to see you. Pay attention to how they respond. Not just what they say, but the energy behind it. Are they understanding? Do they say, no problem, let's find another time, and actually mean it? Or is there an edge to it? A must be nice to be so busy? Or, I guess I'm not a priority? Or even just a noticeable shift in their energy the next time you talk. Someone who's secure will understand that you have a full life and they'll respect that. Someone who's insecure or controlling will start trying to make you feel bad about it almost immediately. And that pattern only intensifies over time. The sixth pattern is whether someone shares positive things about their life with you. This might seem obvious, but pay attention to the balance. Are your conversations weighted heavily toward problems and complaints? Or does this person also share things they're excited about, proud of, happy about? This matters because it shows you what life with this person might actually feel like. If every conversation is heavy, if they're always venting, if there's always a crisis, that's probably what a relationship with them looks like. Not because people shouldn't share their struggles, but because there should be balance. And the reverse is also true. If someone only shares surface-level positive things and never lets you see anything difficult, that's also a pattern. It might mean they're not comfortable with vulnerability or they're performing a version of themselves rather than showing you who they actually are. The healthiest pattern is a balance. Good days and hard days. Excitement and frustration. Wins and setbacks. That's what real life looks like, and you want to be building a relationship with someone's real life, not their highlight reel. The seventh pattern is how someone responds when you set a boundary, even a small one, because you will set boundaries even in the first 2 weeks. Maybe it's, I'm not comfortable sharing that yet, or I prefer to text rather than talk on the phone late at night, or I need to take things slow physically. The pattern you're looking for is easy acceptance, not pushback, not come on, don't be like that, not making you explain or justify or defend your boundary. Just, okay, I respect that. Someone who respects your boundaries early will respect them long-term. Someone who tests them, pushes them, or makes you feel bad about them will continue doing that. And that's not a relationship where you get to feel safe. I once heard someone describe it this way: your boundaries are information about what you need to feel comfortable. Someone who cares about you wants that information because they want you to be comfortable. Someone who doesn't care about you sees boundaries as obstacles to what they want. Pay attention to which one you're dealing with. The eighth pattern is whether someone can admit when they're wrong about something small. Not in a big relationship conflict, because you probably won't have one of those in the first 2 weeks, but in everyday moments. They tell you a story and then realize they got a detail wrong. Do they just correct themselves easily, or do they get defensive? You mention that you see something differently than they do. Can they say, "Oh, you might be right," or "I hadn't thought about it that way"? Or do they double down? This tells you so much about what disagreements with this person will be like down the road. Because if someone can't admit they were wrong about what time a movie starts, they're probably not going to be great at admitting when they've hurt your feelings or made a mistake in the relationship. Flexibility and humility in small things predict flexibility and humility in big things. The 9th pattern is how someone talks about the people in their life. Their friends, their family, their co-workers. Do they speak about them with affection, with respect, or is there a lot of contempt, criticism, and complaints? This isn't about whether they have difficult people in their life. Everyone does. It's about whether they can talk about those difficulties without being cruel or dismissive. It's about whether the overall tone when they discuss the people in their life is warm or cold. Because eventually you'll be one of the people in their life. And how they talk about others is probably how they'll talk about you when you're not around. If they're constantly criticizing their friends, if they talk about their family with disdain, if they seem to have conflict with everyone in their life, that's a pattern. And you're not going to be the exception. The 10th pattern is whether someone shows interest in your life without trying to insert themselves into it immediately. This is a subtle one. You mention your friends, your hobbies, your routines. A healthy response is curiosity. They ask questions. They want to understand your world. An unhealthy response is immediately trying to become part of everything. "Oh, you go to that gym? I should join. You're seeing your friends this weekend? Can I come? You take that class? I've been meaning to try that." It can feel flattering at first, like they're so interested in you that they want to be part of your life right away. But what it often signals is someone who doesn't have their own full life or someone who moves very fast in relationships. And both of those tend to create problems. You want someone who has their own friends, their own interests, their own full life that they're inviting you into while also being curious about yours. Not someone who's looking to merge completely or who seems to have a lot of empty space they're hoping you'll fill. The 11th pattern, and maybe the most telling one, is how someone responds when you're genuinely happy about something. You got good news at work. Something exciting happened with your family. You're celebrating something you worked hard for. Does this person celebrate with you without reservation? Or is there something else? Do they minimize it? Do they immediately talk about their own similar experience? Do they seem uncomfortable with your joy? This is what psychologists call active constructive responding, and it's one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction. It means when something good happens to you, your partner is genuinely happy for you. Not threatened, not competitive, not uncomfortable, just happy because you're happy. And you can see this show up really early. You tell someone something you're excited about. Do their eyes light up? Do they ask you questions about it? Do they want to hear all the details? Or do they kind of gloss over it and change the subject? Pay attention, because you want to build a life with someone who's genuinely glad when good things happen to you. That's not a small thing. That's everything. So those are the 11 patterns. Follow-up questions. Response to vulnerability. How they discuss past relationships. Joy in making you happy. Handling your unavailability. Sharing positive things. Respecting boundaries. Admitting when they're wrong. How they talk about others. Interest without intrusion. And celebrating your wins. Now, here's what I don't want you to do with this information. I don't want you to turn this into a checklist where someone needs to score perfectly on all 11 patterns or they're out. People are human. We all have moments where we're not at our best. Someone might be distracted one day and forget to ask a follow-up question. Someone might be going through something and be more negative than usual. What you're looking for is patterns, not perfection. Over the course of 2 weeks, multiple conversations, different contexts, do you see most of these patterns most of the time? That's what matters. And here's the other thing. These patterns should feel good to you. If you're constantly analyzing every interaction and keeping score, something's already off. When these patterns are present, it tends to feel easy, natural. You feel heard. You feel respected. You feel like yourself. If you find yourself twisting into knots trying to figure out if someone is showing these patterns, if you're constantly confused or second-guessing, that confusion is information too. Healthy relationship patterns don't require this much detective work. They're usually pretty obvious once you know what you're looking for. I also want to say something about what this doesn't tell you. These patterns can show you whether someone is emotionally healthy and capable of being a good partner. But they don't tell you whether you're actually right for each other in all the other ways that matter. You can have all 11 of these patterns and still not be compatible because you want different things, or you're in different places in your lives, or you just don't click in that indefinable way. And that's okay. These patterns help you identify people who have the capacity for healthy relationship. But capacity isn't the same as chemistry or timing or shared values or all the other things that need to align. What these patterns do is help you avoid wasting time with people who aren't capable of showing up the way you need. They help you recognize early what might take months or years to become obvious otherwise. They help you trust your instincts when you notice something feels off. Because I think that's what this is really about. Not finding some perfect person who checks every box, but learning to trust yourself. Learning to pay attention to how someone makes you feel over time. Learning to recognize the difference between someone who talks a good game and someone who actually shows up. You're so much smarter about relationships than you give yourself credit for. You notice things. You pick up on patterns. You sense when something isn't quite right. The problem is we've been taught to override those instincts. To give people the benefit of the doubt. To not be too picky. To not judge too quickly. And while there's wisdom in not writing someone off over one awkward moment, there's also wisdom in taking what you notice seriously. In trusting that when something feels off, there's usually a reason. In believing that you deserve to be with someone where these patterns show up naturally because that's who they are. Those first 2 weeks, they matter more than we usually acknowledge. Not because you can know everything about someone in 2 weeks. You can't. But because people show you who they are from the beginning if you're paying attention. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. You'll see how they handle small disappointments, how they respond to your needs, how they talk about other people, how they make you feel. And all of that is information. Information you get to use to make choices about what you want to invest in. So pay attention. Notice the patterns. Trust what you see. And know that you don't have to make excuses for someone's behavior or convince yourself that what you're noticing doesn't matter or wait to see if things get better. The patterns that are there in the beginning tend to stay. The person who doesn't ask follow-up questions now probably won't suddenly become curious 6 months from now. The person who makes you feel bad about your boundaries now will likely push them later. The person who can't celebrate your wins now probably won't be genuinely happy for you when bigger things happen. But the person who shows up with these patterns early, who makes you feel heard and valued and respected from the start, who treats you with care even when they're just getting to know you, that person is showing you what a relationship with them could look like. And it's worth paying attention to that too. You deserve someone who makes you feel seen, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your joy, who asks about your day and actually wants to know, who can say, "I was wrong, and I'm sorry," and mean it, who talks about you with kindness, who's interested in your life but has their own life too. That's not asking for too much. That's just asking for someone who's ready to be in a healthy relationship with you. And recognizing these patterns early doesn't mean you're being judgmental or harsh or closed off. It means you're being wise. It means you're taking yourself seriously. It means you understand that your time and your energy and your heart are valuable, and you get to be thoughtful about who you share them with. So yes, be open, be hopeful, give people a real chance, but also pay attention. Notice the patterns. Trust yourself. And know that the right person for you will show you who they are through consistent action, not just through words. Those first 2 weeks can tell you so much if you're willing to listen. Not to what someone says they want or who they say they are, but to how they actually show up, how they make you feel, what patterns they establish. And when you find someone where these patterns are present, where it feels good and healthy and real, you'll know. Not because they're perfect, but because they're consistently showing you through their actions that they have the capacity to be a true partner to you. That's what you're looking for, and you're absolutely capable of recognizing it when you see it.